In the year 2147, humanity had stretched its reach far beyond Earth. Mars was no longer a distant dream. It was home to thriving colonies, bustling with engineers, scientists, and families seeking a new life. Orbiting Jupiter were massive space stations, hubs of research and trade that connected humanity's scattered outposts across the solar system. Space exploration had become routine, almost mundane. That is, until one fateful night when everything changed. Deep in the icy expanse of Antarctica, at the United Earth Defense Council's UEDC, most advanced deep space monitoring station, alarms blared unexpectedly. The technicians on duty froze as their screens lit up with strange readings. Someone was trying to communicate. It wasn't just random noise. It was a signal, faint but deliberate, coming from Proxima Centauri, a planet orbiting the closest star to Earth. For decades, astronomers had dismissed it as barren, too hostile for life. Yet here it was, a message drifting through the void like a whisper. Dr. Elena Voss, a brilliant xenolinguist known for decoding alien languages, was called in immediately. Her sharp eyes scanned the data pouring in from the array. At first glance, the transmission seemed chaotic, a jumble of sounds and symbols. But as she listened closer, patterns began to emerge. There were fragments of an unknown language mixed with something eerily familiar, phrases in English. One sentence stood out, clear as day. "They are here. Save us." The room fell silent. Was this real? Or some kind of cosmic prank? The implication sent shivers down everyone's spines. If intelligent beings existed outside Earth, and if they were calling for help, it meant humanity wasn't alone. But it also raised terrifying questions. Who were they? And why did these strangers need saving? News of the signal spread quickly, reaching the highest levels of government. Within hours, leaders from around the globe convened in secret, debating what to do. Some argued it could be a trap set by an advanced civilization, testing Earth's defenses. Others believed ignoring the plea would make humanity guilty of abandoning potential allies. Or worse, future victims. General Marcus Kane, head of the UEDC's military division, cut through the noise with his usual bluntness. "If this is legitimate," he said, slamming his fist on the table, "then we can't afford to sit back and do nothing. This isn't about charity, it's survival. If there's even a chance this signal is genuine, we have to respond. Not because it's noble, but because failing to act could mean disaster." As plans were made to investigate, Dr. Voss worked tirelessly to decipher more of the message. She noticed something peculiar. Hidden within the static were coordinates pointing not to Proxima Centauri itself, but to a small, uncharted moon orbiting it. Could this be where the signal originated? Or was it a decoy meant to lure them into danger? Back at the monitoring station, whispers circulated among the staff. Some felt excitement bubbling inside them. The thrill of discovery, the possibility of meeting another species. Others couldn't shake the feeling of dread. What if they weren't ready for what awaited them out there? For now, the signal remained a mystery, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Humanity stood on the brink of something monumental, though none could say whether it would bring salvation or ruin. All they knew was this: the stars had spoken, and Earth had no choice but to answer. The decision was made. Humanity would respond to the mysterious SOS from Proxima Centauri. But responding wasn't as simple as sending a single ship into the unknown. This mission required Earth's finest minds, its most advanced technology, and its bravest soldiers. It needed Operation Prometheus. Within days of the signal's discovery, the United Earth Defense Council, UEDC, mobilized every resource at its disposal. The centerpiece of the operation was the Aegis, Earth's largest and most sophisticated starship ever built. Sleek and imposing, it bristled with cutting-edge weapon systems, shield generators, and hyperspace engines capable of crossing light years in mere months. Leading the fleet was Captain Rhea Solis, a decorated officer known for her calm under pressure and unshakable sense of duty. Her crew consisted of over 500 specialists, scientists, engineers, medical personnel, and elite combat troops, all handpicked for their skills. Among them was Lieutenant Arjun Patel, a hotshot fighter pilot with a reputation for being fearless and stubborn. Unlike many aboard the Aegis, Patel wasn't thrilled about the mission. To him, it felt reckless. "We're flying blind," he muttered during one briefing, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "For all we know, this could be some alien trap waiting to blow us out of the sky." His skepticism wasn't unfounded. Despite Dr. Elena Voss's progress decoding parts of the SOS signal, much of it remained cryptic. The coordinates pointing to the uncharted moon were clear enough. But what lay there? Friend or foe? Refuge or ruin? No one could say for sure. Still, orders were orders, and Paddle knew better than to question authority too loudly. At least not where his superiors could hear. As preparations continued, tensions simmered among the crew. Some saw themselves as explorers embarking on humanity's greatest adventure yet. Others, like Patel, viewed the mission as a potential suicide run. Arguments broke out in mess halls and corridors, each side convinced they were right. Even Captain Solis struggled to keep morale high. She understood the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders. If anything went wrong, she'd have to answer not just to her crew, but to billions back on Earth. Meanwhile, General Marcus Kane pushed hard for a military-first approach. "Let's not kid ourselves," he told Solis during a private meeting. "This isn't a rescue mission, it's reconnaissance. If those coordinates lead to trouble, I want you ready to neutralize it before it spreads." His words hung heavy in the air, a reminder that diplomacy might take a backseat to firepower if things turned sour. Dr. Voss worked tirelessly alongside the crew, sharing her findings whenever possible. She revealed that the SOS contained fragments of an ancient language intertwined with human-like phrases, a bizarre mix that hinted at either collaboration or mimicry. More troubling was the recurring theme of urgency in the message. Whoever, or whatever, had sent it was desperate. Time was clearly of the essence. Finally, after weeks of preparation, the day of departure arrived. The fleet assembled above Earth's atmosphere, a breathtaking sight against the blue and white curve of the planet below. Dozens of smaller support ships flanked the Aegis, forming a protective formation. Thousands watched live broadcasts as the countdown began. Families said tearful goodbyes, reporters speculated wildly, and politicians gave speeches filled with hope and caution. When the engines roared to life, the fleet shot forward, disappearing into the vastness of space. For the first time in history, humanity ventured beyond its solar system, not out of curiosity, but necessity. Ahead lay untold dangers and mysteries. Behind lay everything they had ever known. As the stars stretched into streaks of light, Captain Solis stood on the bridge, staring ahead. Whatever awaited them, she vowed silently, humanity would face it together. Whether as rescuers, explorers, or warriors, they were ready, or so she hoped. Months passed in the cold silence of space. The crew aboard the Aegis grew accustomed to the hum of the ship's engines and the endless expanse of stars outside their windows. For some, the monotony was unbearable. For others, it offered time to reflect. But no amount of preparation could ready them for what lay ahead. Finally, after traveling farther than any human had before, the fleet arrived at Proxima Centauri. The planet loomed large on the view screens, a swirling mass of violent storms and jagged lightning strikes. Its atmosphere churned with unnatural energy, glowing faintly purple and green. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. No one dared suggest landing there. Whatever had sent the SOS signal wasn't coming from this chaotic world. Instead, their focus shifted to the moon identified by Dr. Elena Voss's coordinates. Through the ship's scanners, they discovered something astonishing: massive structures buried beneath layers of ice. These weren't natural formations. They were ruins, remnants of an alien civilization far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. Towers jutted out like broken teeth, their surfaces etched with intricate carvings that glowed faintly even under the thick frost. Captain Rhea Solis called an emergency meeting in the briefing room. "This changes everything," she said, pointing to holographic images of the moon displayed above the table. "We've found evidence of intelligent life, or at least, we're close to it. But we need to proceed carefully." Lieutenant Arjun Patil leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Carefully. Captain, this place screams danger. Look at those structures. They're half-buried, abandoned. Something wiped these people out. What if whatever did it is still here?" His words hung heavy in the air, but Dr. Voss stepped in, her voice calm yet firm. "That's exactly why we're here, Lieutenant. If we don't investigate, we'll never know who sent the SOS, or why. And if there's a threat, understanding it might be our only chance to stop it." With little choice but to move forward, teams prepared to land on the moon. Drones were deployed first, scanning the surface for hazards. As they descended through the thin atmosphere, strange phenomena began to occur. Equipment malfunctioned without warning. Sensors gave erratic readings. Crew members reported hearing faint whispers over their comms, soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Dr. Voss listened intently to recordings of the whispers, her eyes narrowing. "These aren't random sounds," she said. "They match patterns in the original SOS signal. There's intelligence behind them. Someone or something is trying to communicate." The drones reached the ruins and transmitted footage back to the Aegis. Inside the crumbling towers, walls shimmered with bioluminescent veins, pulsing faintly as though alive. Strange symbols covered every surface, shifting slightly when observed. A trick of the light, or something more. As the first exploration team suited up, tension gripped the crew. Were they walking into salvation, or straight into a trap? Captain Solis reminded everyone of their mission: find answers, protect Earth. Yet deep down, she wondered if they truly grasped the scale of what they were facing. When the shuttle touched down near the largest structure, the ground trembled beneath its landing gear. Dust rose around them, obscuring their view momentarily. As the dust settled, movement caught their attention, not human, not machine. Shadows flickered in the distance, retreating into the ruins. What was that? Someone whispered. No one answered. They all felt it, the weight of being watched. Whatever awaited them inside those ancient walls, one thing was certain: humanity's journey into the unknown had only just begun. The exploration team stepped cautiously into the ruins, their helmet lights cutting through the thick darkness. The air inside was frigid, and every breath fogged up their visors. Strange symbols on the walls glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm as though alive. Each step echoed unnaturally loud, making the silence between sounds feel heavier. Everyone's nerves were taut. They knew they weren't alone. Dr. Elena Voss led the group, her scanner beeping erratically. "These patterns, they're similar to what we decoded from the SOS signal," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Whoever built this place used a language tied directly to sound frequencies. It's like music, but more complex." Lieutenant Arjun Patel brought up the rear, his hand never straying far from his weapon. He scanned the shadows constantly, expecting something, or someone, to leap out at any moment. "If this is supposed to be some kind of welcome mat, I'm not impressed," he muttered under his breath. Suddenly, movement caught their attention. From deeper within the ruins, shapes emerged, tall, insectoid creatures with sleek exoskeletons that shimmered like obsidian. Their elongated limbs moved gracefully, almost hypnotically, and their large, multifaceted eyes reflected the light from the teens' helmets. They didn't attack immediately, but instead circled the humans, studying them with an unsettling calm. Captain Rhea Solis raised a hand, signaling her team to hold their ground. "Stand down," she ordered firmly. "Let's try communicating before anyone does anything rash." Dr. Voss stepped forward hesitantly, holding up her scanner. She activated a tone derived from the SOS signal, a low hum that resonated through the chamber. At first, Nothing happened. Then one of the insectoids tilted its head, mimicking the motion curiously. Slowly, it responded with a series of clicks and chirps, accompanied by subtle vibrations in the floor beneath their feet. "They understand," Dr. Voss exclaimed, excitement breaking through her usual composure. "They're responding." But the exchange wasn't entirely friendly. As communication attempts continued, the insectoids grew agitated. One of them gestured repeatedly toward the exit, its movements urgent. Through trial and error, Dr. Voss managed to interpret fragments of their message. One word came through clearly over and over again: "Run." Before anyone could react, the ground trembled violently. A deep guttural roar echoed through the ruins, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. The insectoids scattered, retreating deeper into the tunnels without hesitation. Panic rippled through the human team. "What the hell was that?" Patil shouted, raising his weapon instinctively. "Something big and close," Solus replied grimly. "Fall back. Now." As they turned to leave, a shadow darker than the surrounding gloom filled the corridor behind them. Towering over 20 feet tall, a monstrous biomechanical creature emerged. Its body was a grotesque fusion of flesh and metal, its limbs lined with jagged edges that gleamed menacingly. Glowing red veins pulsed across its surface, and its single cyclopean eye scanned the room with predatory intent. The creature emitted a pulse, a wave of energy that knocked several team members off their feet. Equipment short-circuited instantly, plunging parts of the ruins into darkness. Fear gripped the explorers as they realized escape wouldn't be easy. "We need to get out of here," Solus yelled, firing her sidearm at the beast. The bullets ricocheted harmlessly off its armored hide. Patil grabbed Dr. Voss's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Keep moving," he barked. "Don't look back." Behind them, the creature advanced steadily, its roar reverberating through the ruins. The insectoid's warning made sense now, but too late. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just hunting. It was harvesting. As the team fled, one thought burned in their minds. Humanity had walked straight into the lair of something ancient, powerful, and utterly merciless. The team sprinted through the crumbling ruins, their breaths ragged and hearts pounding. Behind them, the monstrous biomechanical creature, dubbed the Harvester by Dr. Elena Voss in a fleeting moment of clarity, moved with terrifying precision. Its massive form crushed debris beneath its weight, and each step sent tremors rippling through the ground. The air grew colder as it emitted pulses of energy that disrupted their equipment, plunging sections of the tunnels into darkness. Captain Rhea Solus led the retreat, her mind racing. "Stay together," she shouted over the comms, though static interrupted her voice. "We can't outrun it forever. We need a plan." Lieutenant Arjun Patil glanced back, his jaw tightening as he saw the Harvester gaining on them. Its glowing red veins pulsed faster, as if feeding off their fear. He grabbed a fallen drone fragment and hurled it toward the beast in desperation. The object exploded harmlessly against its armored hide, but for a brief second, the creature paused, tilting its head as if analyzing the attack. Dr. Voss noticed this too. "It's intelligent," she gasped, clutching her scanner. "Not just instinct-driven, it's learning." "That's great news," Patel snapped sarcastically. "What do we do now?" "Ask it nicely to leave us alone." Ignoring his sarcasm, Voss focused on her scanner. She had been studying the SOS signal for months, piecing together fragments of its frequency patterns. Now those same patterns echoed faintly in the pulses the Harvester emitted. An idea sparked in her mind, one so risky it might get them all killed. "Captain," she called out, struggling to keep up with the group. "I think I can slow it down, but I'll need time, and someone to cover me." Solus hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "Patil, take point. Keep that thing busy while Dr. Voss works." Patil cursed under his breath but obeyed, turning back to face the Harvester. He fired bursts from his weapon, aiming for its glowing veins. Each shot ricocheted harmlessly, but the noise seemed to irritate the creature, forcing it to focus on him instead of the rest of the team. Meanwhile, Voss knelt beside a pile of rubble, hastily assembling a makeshift device using parts from her scanner and a portable emitter. Her hands trembled as she connected wires, sweat dripping down her face despite the freezing temperature. "Come on, come on," she whispered to herself. Behind her, the harvester roared, swiping at Patel with one of its clawed limbs. He dove out of the way just in time, rolling to his feet and firing again. The distraction worked, for now, but he knew he couldn't hold its attention indefinitely. Finally, Voss stood up, holding the crude device in shaking hands. "Ready," she shouted. "Get clear." SOS grabbed her arm and pulled her back as Patel sprinted toward them. With no time to waste, Voss activated the device. A high-pitched tone filled the chamber, resonating with the same frequency embedded in the SOS signal. The harvester froze mid-step, its single eye flickering erratically. For a moment, it seemed confused, almost vulnerable. But then, with a deafening screech, it reared back, shaking violently as if trying to shake off the sound. Cracks appeared along its metallic skin, revealing pulsating organic tissue beneath. It let out another pulse of energy, stronger this time, knocking everyone off their feet. "We've got to go," SOS yelled, helping Voss to her feet. "Now." As they scrambled toward the exit, the harvester retreated into the shadows, its movements sluggish but deliberate. Though weakened, it wasn't defeated. Not yet. Back outside, the team collapsed onto the icy surface, gasping for air. Their shuttle hovered nearby, engines roaring as it prepared for extraction. As they climbed aboard, none of them spoke. They had survived. For now. But the encounter left them shaken. One thing was certain: the harvester wasn't just a predator. It was something far more dangerous, a being designed to consume, adapt, and grow stronger. And humanity had just made its acquaintance. Back aboard the Aegis, the survivors of the harrowing encounter with the harvester were shaken but alive. Captain Rhea Solis ordered a full debriefing in the ship's main conference room, where holographic displays flickered to life, projecting images of the ruins and the monstrous creature that had nearly ended their mission. The mood was grim. No one spoke as they replayed footage from their helmets, analyzing every detail. Dr. Elena Voss stood at the center of the room, her face pale but determined. "That thing, the harvester, isn't just some random predator," she began, pointing to an image of its biomechanical form. "Its design matches the architecture we saw in the ruins. Those structures weren't built by the insectoids. They predate them. Whoever created those ruins also created the harvester." Lieutenant Arjun Patil leaned forward, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "So what you're saying is, this thing isn't new. It's ancient, and it's been killing for who knows how long." "Exactly," Voss replied. "And it's not just killing, it's harvesting. Remember the pulses it emitted? They disrupted our tech, but I think they also extracted data. That's why it paused when I used the SOS frequency. For a moment, it couldn't process conflicting signals." Her words sent a chill through the room. If the harvester consumed knowledge along with its victims, then it wasn't merely a threat to human lives. It was a threat to humanity's very existence. Every piece of technology, every discovery, every secret could be absorbed into its ever-growing hive mind. General Marcus Kane, patched in via video link from Earth, listened intently before speaking. "If this thing has been around for millennia, why hasn't it wiped out everything already? Why wait until now?" Voss hesitated, scrolling through fragments of data recovered from the ruins. "I don't think it waits," she said slowly. "It moves methodically, consuming civilizations one by one." The SOS signal came from a coalition, a group of species trying to unite against it. But they failed. The revelation hit hard. Humanity wasn't dealing with a single enemy. It was facing something that had destroyed countless others before them. Fragments of alien languages embedded in the SOS hinted at desperate alliances formed and broken under the weight of the harvester's onslaught. Captain Solus broke the silence. Then we need to learn from their mistakes. Whatever intel we can gather might give us an edge. With renewed urgency, the crew turned their attention to the data collected during the mission. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged drones, salvaging recordings and scans from the ruins. Meanwhile, Dr. Voss pored over the symbols etched into the walls, deciphering more of the ancient language. She discovered references to cycles, periods when the harvester would awaken, consume, and then retreat into dormancy, leaving behind desolation. But there was hope buried within the despair. Hidden among the ruins' records were clues about the harvester's weaknesses. Its reliance on sound frequencies suggested vulnerabilities tied to specific tones or patterns. If harnessed correctly, these could disable or even destroy. As days passed, tensions eased slightly as progress was made. Lieutenant Patel, though still skeptical, found himself drawn into strategy sessions, offering insights based on his combat experience. Even General Kane softened his stance, acknowledging the value of teamwork over brute force. Yet, lingering doubts remained. Could humanity truly stand against such an ancient, relentless foe? Or were they simply delaying the inevitable? For now, answers lay buried in the ruins, and perhaps in the insectoids themselves. As the fleet prepared to return to the moon for further exploration, one truth became clear. Survival depended not only on strength but on understanding. And time was running out. The mood aboard the Aegis grew tense as preparations for a second expedition to the moon intensified. The crew was divided, their unity fractured by fear and uncertainty. Some believed humanity's best chance lay in diplomacy, working with the insectoids or deciphering more of the ruins' secrets. Others argued that caution had already cost them too much. They needed to strike first, before the harvester returned stronger. Lieutenant Arjun Patel found himself at the center of the debate. His skepticism about the mission had hardened into outright resistance after their narrow escape. "We're wasting time," he snapped during a heated briefing. "Every second we sit here debating is another second that thing gets closer to figuring us out. Next time, it won't hesitate." Captain Ria Solis shot him a sharp look. "And rushing in blindly will get us all killed. We need answers, not revenge." Patel clenched his fists but held his tongue. He respected Solis, but her cautious approach frustrated him. To him, every moment spent analyzing data felt like inviting disaster. Yet he couldn't deny the logic behind her words. Without understanding the harvester's weaknesses, any attack would be suicide. Dr. Elena Voss tried to bridge the gap between the two sides. "Both perspectives have merit," she said diplomatically. "But we can't afford division right now. If we're going to survive this, we need to work together." Her plea fell on deaf ears for some. General Marcus Kane, still monitoring operations from Earth, pushed harder than ever for aggression. "Enough talk," he barked over the comms. "Send in fighters. Bombard the area if you have to. Show that monster we're not afraid." Others sided with Solis, including Lieutenant Commander Marahayes, head of the science team. "General, with respect, brute force won't solve this," she countered. "If the harvester absorbs knowledge, destroying the ruins could make it stronger. We need precision, not chaos." As arguments escalated, Dr. Voss made a startling discovery. While reviewing surveillance footage from the first encounter, she noticed something unusual. The insectoids hadn't fled entirely. Instead, they'd been watching the fleet from a distance, using advanced cloaking technology to remain hidden. This revelation sparked both hope and suspicion. "They'd been observing us," Voss explained during an emergency meeting. "They know more about the harvester than we do, and they might be willing to share." Captain Solis seized the opportunity. "Then let's reach out. If we can establish trust, maybe they'll help us fight back." Not everyone agreed. Patel voiced his doubts loudly. "You want to trust aliens we barely understand. What if this is exactly what the harvester wants, to pit us against each other?" Despite the dissent, Solis authorized a risky maneuver. Using stolen tech recovered from the ruins, Voss modified a communication device to emit signals mimicking the insectoid's language. After hours of trial and error, a response came, a series of clicks and vibrations transmitted directly to the ship's systems. "They're willing to meet," Voss announced, her voice trembling with excitement, "but only under strict conditions. No weapons, minimal personnel." The decision split the crew further. Some saw the alliance as humanity's last hope. Others viewed it as reckless endangerment. Paddle volunteered to accompany SOS on the diplomatic mission, though his reasons were less noble. "If this goes sideways, someone needs to be there to pull the plug," he muttered. As the shuttle descended toward the designated meeting point, nerves ran high. Would the insectoids offer salvation or betrayal? One thing was certain. Humanity's fate now rested not just on courage, but on trust. The meeting with the insectoids took place in a desolate valley on the moon's surface, far from the ruins where the Harvester had first appeared. Captain Ria Solis and Lieutenant Arjun Patel stepped out of the shuttle, their hands deliberately kept visible to show they came unarmed. Behind them, Dr. Elena Voss monitored communications from inside the ship, ready to translate any exchanges. The insectoids emerged cautiously from the shadows, their obsidian-like exoskeletons shimmering faintly under the dim light of Proxima Centauri. They moved with precision, surrounding the humans but keeping a respectful distance. One of them, a larger specimen with intricate markings on its thorax, stepped forward. Its multifaceted eyes locked onto Solis, who stood tall despite her racing heart. Through the modified communicator, Dr. Voss relayed translations as the insectoid began clicking and chirping. "They're introducing themselves," she explained. "This one is. I think we can call it a leader. It says they've been fighting the Harvester for generations." Solis nodded slowly, signaling patience. "Tell them we want to help, but we need information. Weaknesses, patterns, anything that can give us an edge." The insectoid tilted its head, processing the response through the device. After a pause, it gestured toward the ruins, emitting a series of urgent tones. Voss translated hesitantly. "It says the ruins hold answers, but also danger. They believe the Harvester is drawn to energy sources, especially those tied to sound frequencies." Lieutenant Patel frowned, his hand twitching near his sidearm. "Great. So what happens when our engines or weapons attract its attention again?" The insectoid clicked sharply, clearly understanding Patel's tone, if not his exact words. Through the translator, Voss conveyed its reply. "They say there's no avoiding it now. The Harvester knows we're here, but they offer something else. A map of sorts, showing weak points in its defenses." As the insectoid projected holographic images into the air using bioluminescent patterns on its body, the humans studied them closely. The diagrams highlighted specific areas on the Harvester's form, glowing veins and joints that seemed vulnerable to targeted attacks. However, these weak points were heavily guarded, requiring precise timing and coordination to exploit. Captain Solis exchanged a glance with Patel. "If this works, we might stand a chance, but it'll take everything we've got." Before leaving, the insectoids issued a final warning. Through the translator, Voss summarized grimly. "They say the Harvester isn't just a predator, it's evolving. Every encounter makes it stronger, smarter. If we don't act soon, it may become unstoppable." Back aboard the Aegis, the crew prepared for battle. Engineers worked around the clock to modify weapon systems, calibrating them to emit disruptive sound frequencies based on the SOS signal. Fighters were outfitted with experimental payloads designed to overload the Harvester's neural network. Meanwhile, General Marcus Kane insisted on deploying orbital bombardments as backup, though Solis vetoed the idea, fearing collateral damage could destroy valuable intel in the ruins. Tensions flared as the fleet approached the designated battleground. Some crew members questioned whether trusting the insectoids was wise, while others argued humanity had no other choice. Lieutenant Patel remained conflicted, torn between his instincts and the growing realization that survival depended on cooperation. Finally, the moment arrived. Sensors detected movement beneath the ice. the telltale signs of the harvester awakening. Smaller drones swarmed out first, resembling miniature versions of the beast itself. The fleet opened fire, engaging in a desperate skirmish as the massive creature emerged once more. Amidst the chaos, Dr. Voss's voice crackled over the comms. "Remember the plan. Target the glowing veins and joints." The battle raged on, ships weaving through enemy fire, fighters diving recklessly close to deliver payloads. For every hit landed, the harvester retaliated with devastating pulses of energy, disabling shields and crippling vessels. Casualties mounted, but the crew pressed on, driven by sheer determination. Then came the turning point. Using data provided by the insectoids, the fleet identified a critical vulnerability, a pulsating core embedded deep within the harvester's chest. Destroying it would require someone to get dangerously close. Lieutenant Patil stared at the controls of his fighter, knowing what he had to do. "Permission to execute Operation Overload," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the weight of his decision. Captain Solis hesitated only for a moment before responding. "Granted. Bring it home, Lieutenant." As Patil accelerated toward the harvester, the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and the hope that sacrifice could still turn the tide. Lieutenant Arjun Patel's fighter streaked through the chaos, its engines roaring as he pushed it to the limit. The harvester loomed ahead, a monstrous titan wreathed in pulsating red veins and jagged metallic limbs. Smaller drones swarmed around it like angry hornets, firing relentless bursts of energy at the fleet. Explosions lit up the battlefield, debris spiraling into the void as ships fell one by one. Patel's heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing louder than the cacophony outside. He knew what Operation Overload entailed, a suicide mission disguised as strategy. His modified fighter carried an experimental device designed to amplify the SOS frequency, creating a pulse strong enough to overload the harvester's neural network. But getting close enough to activate it meant certain death. "Stay on course, Lieutenant." Captain Ria Solis's voice crackled over the comms, steady despite the strain. "We're counting on you." Patil didn't respond. His mind raced with memories. His childhood in Mumbai, laughing with his siblings under the monsoon rains. His first flight, the thrill of breaking Earth's atmosphere. The faces of his crewmates aboard the Aegis, people who had become family. He clenched the controls tighter, forcing himself to focus. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone back home, the billions who would never know his name, but whose lives depended on his actions. As he approached the harvester, smaller drones closed in, peppering his ship with fire. Shields flickered dangerously low, alarms blaring in the cockpit. Patil gritted his teeth, weaving through the storm of projectiles with practiced precision. One wrong move, and it would all be over. 30 seconds to target range, Dr. Elena Voss announced, her voice trembling but resolute. She monitored the operation from the Aegis, feeding Patil real-time data. "You're almost there." The harvester seemed to sense the threat, its single cyclopean eye locking onto Patel's fighter. It emitted a deafening screech, sending out a pulse that shook the entire battlefield. Ships faltered, their systems disrupted momentarily. Patel's vision blurred as the wave hit, but he fought through the disorientation, pushing forward. 15 seconds, Voss called out. Her words were barely audible over the roar of static filling Patel's ears. The glowing core within the harvester's chest pulsed erratically, brighter with every passing second. Patil lined up his approach, sweat dripping down his face as he steadied his hands. The final stretch felt endless, each moment stretching into eternity. "Activate the emitter now," Solis shouted. Patil flipped the switch. A high-pitched tone erupted from his ship, resonating outward in concentric waves. The harvester convulsed violently, its massive body writhing as if in agony. The red veins along its surface darkened, then shattered like glass. Its movements slowed, becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. But Patil wasn't done yet. He guided his fighter straight toward the exposed core. knowing the amplified signal alone wouldn't finish the job. With a deep breath, he armed the payload, one last explosive charge designed to deliver the killing blow. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Then, with a final burst of speed, he rammed the fighter directly into the core. The explosion was blinding, a supernova of light and energy that engulfed the harvester entirely. For a moment, everything went silent. The hum of engines, the chatter of comms, even the distant rumble of battle, all swallowed by the void. Back aboard the Aegis, the crew watched in stunned silence as the massive creature collapsed inward, its form dissolving into nothingness. Cheers erupted hesitantly at first, then grew louder, mingling with sobs of relief and grief. Lieutenant Arjun Patel was gone, but his sacrifice had saved them all. Captain SOS stood frozen on the bridge, staring at the empty space where the harvester once stood. Her voice cracked as she spoke into the comms. "We owe him everything." And for the first time since arriving at Proxima Centauri, hope flickered faintly in the hearts of those left behind. The return journey to Earth was somber, the weight of sacrifice pressing heavily on the survivors. Lieutenant Arjun Patel's name echoed through every corridor of the Aegis, spoken in hushed tones by those who had served alongside him. His final act of bravery had not only saved the fleet, but also ensured humanity's survival against an ancient and relentless foe. Yet, no amount of gratitude could fill the void left behind. Captain Rhea Solis spent hours alone on the bridge, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. She replayed Patel's last moments in her mind, his voice steady even as he faced certain death. "You're almost there," Dr. Elena Voss had said, and Patel had been. He'd carried them across the finish line when all seemed lost. Solis clenched her fists tightly, vowing silently that his sacrifice wouldn't be forgotten. Back on Earth, news of the mission spread like wildfire. Billions watched live broadcasts as the battered fleet descended through the atmosphere, greeted by cheering crowds and tearful families. The insectoids, true to their word, shared what remained of their knowledge with humanity. Data, technology, and insights into civilizations long since consumed by the harvester. It was a fragile alliance, born of necessity, but it marked the beginning of something unprecedented: cooperation between species for mutual survival. General Marcus Kane stepped down from his position shortly after the fleet's return. Publicly, he cited health reasons. Privately, he admitted to Captain SOS that his aggressive tactics might have doomed them all. "I underestimated you." "And him," Kane confessed, nodding toward a memorial plaque bearing Patel's name. "Maybe it's time someone else takes the reins." In the months that followed, humanity began rebuilding, not just its ships and stations, but its perspective. The ruins on Proxima Centauri were declared a protected site, a testament to the civilizations that had come before. Scientists worked tirelessly to decode more of the ancient language, uncovering warnings and wisdom buried within the carvings. Humanity learned humility, realizing they weren't alone in the universe, and certainly not invincible. Dr. Voss became a symbol of this new era, advocating for peaceful coexistence with alien life. Her work bridged gaps between cultures, fostering trust where fear once reigned. She often spoke of Patel during interviews, reminding people that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. "He didn't do what he did because he wanted glory," she said. "He did it because he believed in us, in our ability to rise above ourselves." For Captain SOS, leadership took on new meaning. No longer just a commander, she became a beacon of unity, urging humanity to look beyond its borders. Speeches given under spotlights carried messages of hope. "We ventured into the unknown not knowing what we'd find. We faced darkness and found light. Now let's carry that light forward." As years passed, humanity reached farther into space than ever before. New colonies thrived, alliances strengthened, and exploration missions launched with renewed purpose. But always at the heart of these endeavors lay the memory of Lieutenant Arjun Patel, a man who gave everything so others could live. His legacy wasn't written in stone or etched on monuments. It lived in the choices humanity made moving forward, to seek understanding over conflict, to embrace diversity rather than fear it, and to venture boldly into the cosmos, not as conquerors, but as equals among the stars. And though the scars of battle would fade with time, one truth remained etched in humanity's collective soul. Courage, sacrifice, and hope could light even the darkest corners of the universe.